Mirasee.
So nothing in the universe stops, and you and I are also not allowed to stop. And this is where goals come in. A goal is a spiritual seed that gets a human being in harmony with the laws of the universe. It gets a human being in harmony with the primary law of create or disintegrate.
Do you want to know how to transform your wildest dreams into tangible realities? Have you ever pondered the secrets behind manifesting your deepest desires? And how can daily rituals or habits pave the way for extraordinary manifestations? I'm Melinda Cohan, and you're listening to Just Between Coaches. I run a business called the Coaches Console, and we're proud to have helped tens of thousands of coaches create profitable and thriving businesses. Now, this is a podcast where we answer burning questions that newer coaches would love to ask a more experienced coach. In this episode, we're going to explore the delicate balance between setting ambitious goals and surrendering to the universe's timing. My guest and I will dive into the transformative power of gratitude and amplifying your manifestations. So keep listening. I've invited Dave Conway to the show today for this conversation. Dave is a seven-figure entrepreneur and founder of Conway Consulting. He specializes in mindset and sales mentorship. He's renowned for his action-oriented approach in helping clients achieve financial goals while fostering leadership skills. He's been mentored by Bob Proctor and contributes to Forbes as a member of the Coaches Council. His success stems from empowering individuals to recognize their inherent power. Welcome, Dave.
Melinda, thank you.
I'm excited to have you on this show for this particular conversation. Before we dive in, would you mind sharing just a little bit of your background?
So originally, as a young man, I fell into the construction industry for 15 years. I had something happen in my life when I was 21 years old, and I lost a lot of my confidence. My brother at the time was working in a lumber yard, and he said, "Hey, I could get you a job down here," which sounded perfect to me because I didn't want to see people. So I got a job driving a forklift, and I got 15 years in the construction industry with that one suggestion. And I never liked it and I never enjoyed it. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. And then in 2017, I pivoted out of the construction industry into the coaching industry. At the time, I didn't know I was getting into the coaching industry. There was an opportunity to work with the incredible Bob Proctor. And I thought I died and gone to heaven. I'd seen him at 18 years old, and he influenced my life so much. So I became a Proctor Gallagher consultant with him, and then the rest is history.
Wow. And so you've been in this industry ever since. And I love that you've been able to work closely with Bob Proctor. He was an early influence for me when I first got into the coaching industry. What was back in 2002, I guess it was. He's just an incredible source of inspiration on the topic of manifestation. And that's what we're going to dive into today. It really gets into that realm of the limitless potential, that profound transformation. So let's dive in. And I'm pretty sure everybody listening knows what we're talking about. But just to make sure, let's start with the obvious. What exactly is manifesting? How would you describe that and define that?
Oh, I love it. Manifesting is moving thought into the world. And we're all manifestors. So one of my purposes in life is to make manifestation logical, to remove the veil behind like it's some mystical thing going on, that it's woo-woo, that it doesn't work, that it's nonsense. Every human being on the planet is manifesting perpetually. If a person stops for a moment and actually starts to think, they're going to realize that their whole life, from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed at night, all they're doing is try to move thought into form. It can be as simple as, I want to go have a coffee. I got to go to the bathroom. I want to pick up the kids. I want to go for dinner tonight. All we're doing as human beings is taking ideas from our mind and trying to move them into the world. That is manifestation. We're trying to transmute the form of thought into the form of reality.
Now, when you first heard Bob Proctor, did you say when you were 18 years old? Is that when you first heard him? Is that where you first picked up on this, or did that come later for you?
Yeah, so my whole life, I've always known that there was something going on behind people's behaviors. I'm obsessed with people. I like to observe nature, but I have always been obsessed with people. I don't see colors or anything like that, but I always knew there was something. So throughout my whole life, all the way up till I was 18, until I saw Bob Proctor, I'd never heard anybody talk like that. My mother had a friend named Marianne Brennan, and Marianne said, hey, there's this gentleman talking down at the Travelodge Hotel. And it was the first, last, and only time he was ever there. He was there for 2 hours. I didn't know who he was. My mom didn't know who he was. And we went, and I'll tell you, I'd never heard anybody talk like that in my entire life. Everything he was saying made a lot of sense. And he had this one little slide up there. It was like a little yellow dot. And he said, let this dot represent your level of awareness. And he said, everything in your life is being produced by your level of awareness. And he said, what would happen if your level of awareness doubled? And the little dot doubled in size. Now, at the time, I was selling snowboards, which doesn't make any sense because I live on the prairie, so I don't know who the heck was buying them. Cross-country skis maybe would have been a better thing. And I was earning $1,000 a month, which was fine for an 18-year-old. And I thought, wow, I'd be making $2,000 a month. And then he said, what would happen if it doubled again? And I thought, oh my God, like $4,000 a month. Whew. And then he doubled it again. I think I almost passed out. I thought, oh my God, wouldn't that be fantastic? So he kept doubling it, and the whole screen went yellow. And he said, but the truth is, you're always here. And he shrunk it right back down. And as strange as it sounds, that little yellow dot changed my whole perspective. That was my first introduction that I am the one producing life. Unfortunately, I didn't grasp what he was saying or many personal development ideas for about 15 years. So that was my first true introduction to the idea and concept of success, that we can become self-determining people. However, I spent the next 15 years trying to do that, and I was failing miserably. I never produced any results of any substantiality for 15 years. So when I started in this industry in 2017, I was really struggling. I was financially broke. I was physically broke. I've been in the construction industry. My physical health had deteriorated so far by the time I was 33. And when I'd go down the stair, I actually rubbed all the paint off the banister because I had to push and hold it. I still say, those steel toe boots that they force everyone to wear, they're doing more damage than just not wearing them because you're walking on a metal plate. Destroyed my body.
Oh, yeah.
I became a very short-tempered, angry person. I was on a job site and there was an inspector. This is when I knew I was in trouble. I was on a job site and there was an inspector. I got so angry at him that I was actually going to physically hit him. One of my guys had to run out of the house and literally hold me back. I knew I was in big trouble. I knew that something was wrong because here I am trying to abide by principles for 15 years. And this is my behavior. And that's when I Googled, I said, I wonder if Bob Proctor's still doing his thing. And that thought, I have gratitude for it today. So I went online, Googled it, flew down 2017, and my life has never been the same.
Wow. Now, let's use hindsight for a second. I don't want to hang out in this space too long because it's not going to be a fun question, but I think we can learn and glean a lot from it. When you look back on those 15 years, you said you were practicing the principles, but you weren't getting anywhere. What do you think contributed to that? Why were you practicing the principles, but they weren't, like the thought wasn't turning into reality?
Well, number one, I was doing a job I never liked.
Mm-hmm.
I just fell into it. When we're least confident, we're the most vulnerable. When we're in pain, we're the most vulnerable. So I was in pain and I was vulnerable. I just wanted to hole up, and my brother gave me a suggestion. Hey, I can get you a job driving a forklift in this place. I said, okay. I didn't know I was signed up for over 13 years in the industry. So I think that what happened was, number one, I was doing a job I wasn't passionate about. When I saw Bob at 18, I wanted to do what he was doing. I was too ignorant to know that I could. The second part was I was forever trying to change the outside. I'd missed the memo when it came to changing me. A lot of manifestation doesn't work for people because in my opinion, true manifestation is manifesting a new version of yourself, a new identity. Like, we are naturally producing our life. If you want your life to change, you have to change yourself. And I think too many of us, we're trying to fix the outside and we don't know about the inside. Today, I would say true manifestation is changing ourselves. So I missed the memo on the paradigm, the subconscious belief system. I missed that memo. And the biggest one is I missed the memo on the self-image, your identity, how you perceive yourself, what you do. When I got these in alignment in 2017, I became the top selling consultant in the world for Bob Proctor within 1 year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done. My business, the Coaches Console, we celebrated 20 years And I was doing a special webinar for the folks in our community. I was reflecting on, like, it's been this weird out of body experience I've had. I'm like, oh, I am my future self, who I used to dream of 20 years ago when I first started the business. I went into this mode of, what are all the things I'm grateful for my early self that I'm so grateful that she did along the way. And I was sharing these kind of gratitudes and insights and lessons that I've learned. One of them that I shared was, the most important question I ever have learned to ask myself is, who do I need to become for my dreams to be a reality? When we spend time with that question, from the inside out, our whole world will correspond to however we answer that question. Is that a question that you use to reflect, or how do you work on the inside of you first?
Yeah. So the process for manifestation that I follow is very simple. First, you got to have a goal, and it's got to be audacious. Like, turn your annual income into your monthly income. I can't even begin to tell you how many people I've helped do that with this. So you got to have a goal that stretches you. I think that one of the errors that we make is that we think we have to believe that we can achieve the goal when we set it. No, you have to develop the belief. So the only criteria to set a goal is, do I want it? So when I worked with Bob, he got me to read a chapter in Think and Grow Rich on decision. I read that chapter regularly for 18 months. At the end of 18 months, I realized I was terrible at making decisions. So this is insane. If this was 7 years ago and I was like, what, you did this? I hired a guy for $35,000 to meet with me for 2 hours, tell me do one thing and one thing only, change the way I make decisions. $17,500 an hour. And at the end of those 2 hours, I'll share with your entire audience what I paid $35,000 for. At the end of it all, he made me commit that I would only make decisions on what I wanted, never on what I had. The only criteria to make a decision is, do you want it? So once you set that goal, the next step, you got to form a clear mental picture. So you'll conjure this, like in your imagination, create a scene that would reflect that this goal is complete. So for me, my goal was to earn $100,000 a month as a world-class mentor. I'd never mentored anybody. I couldn't lead anybody in silent prayer. I'd never done a talk, nothing like that. So we're talking not just like a 20x of my income, a 20x of my income in an industry, in a profession that I'd never even done before. So that's audacious, that's dreaming. And when I said it, I built this image, this visualization where it was me pulling up to my bank. I was in my Jaguar XKR, which was my dream car. I did not own one at the time, but in my mind. So I pulled up. My bank has all glass windows. I would feel the car. I would see it. I would get out. I'd feel the handle. I'd get out of the car. I'd close the car. I could hear it. The car close. I'd go up to the bank. I'd see myself in the reflection. I'd feel the handle. I'd open it. I'd go into the vestibule. I'd touch that. I'd feel the cold metal. I'd open that. And then, when you go into a bank, banks are they're like libraries. So once you go in, the energy it's like, like it changes, it changes once you walk in there. So I'd feel that change. I'd go up, I'd see there's this lady, Lori, who was a teller. I'd go up, I'd take the card out, put it into the machine. I'd see her move her monitor screen. And she'd say, what can I do for you? I say, how much is in there? She would say, there's 100,000 in there. And I can't even tell you how many times I did this. First off, for those 15 years, I was not operating with a goal. Second is, I was definitely not operating with clear mental pictures. So now when I set a goal, I sit down for an hour and I form a clear mental picture of the situation that would reflect that done. After I create the clear mental picture, I then ask myself, who is the man that is naturally producing that? The key word is naturally, because I think we can produce results temporarily and we can produce results unnaturally through pure will and pure brute force. But the problem with that is that doesn't mean your paradigm has actually changed. That doesn't mean your nature has changed permanently. So you might be hot to trot. You might be focused up for a month. And anybody, I think, can focus up for a month. But who can focus up for a year, for a decade, for 2 years? Every day, just keep getting into that man. Who is he? And keep catching the old guy out. What I used to do was, when I would lie in bed at night, I would get rid of Dave Conway. Now, don't tell my mother this, because she's an Irish Catholic woman, so she's an Irish Catholic woman, and I was no longer a Catholic. I was nothing. I had no beliefs. There was no Dave Conway. So every night when I go to bed, I would get rid of Dave Conway. I would wake up and just fill my mind with the man I wanted to be. Through this process, my income went from $5,000 a month to $100,000 within 31 months.
Within 31 months.
31 months, yeah.
Wow. Now, when we talk about setting those ambitious goals, those audacious goals, and we combine that with, we're in control, we're the manifestors, we're the ones going through those steps. How do you balance that with aligning with the universe's, the universe corresponds to support you, right? The synchronicity starting to happen, the new people showing up, and all that's at play out there while you're doing the internal work. Because I used to be this massive control freak. And I'm like, if it's got to be, it's up to me. That was my mantra that I ran for so long. And it served me well back in the day. But then it was like, hold on a second. I'm about to tip over into burnout and working my fingers to the bones. And that's not how I want to be. So how do you balance? You're controlling the inside, but you still want the magic of the universe.
Well, there is a version inside of everybody that will naturally produce the results that you want. Now, you are naturally producing all the results that you're currently getting. You may not like them all, but you are the creator of them. And if you can accept that idea, you're ahead of about 99% of the world, because everybody else just plays the blame game. And anyone who plays that game is a powerless person. This question changed my life. I was sitting in the studio and I asked, what's the universe's paradigm? And I got the answer like instantly. It's support. We have such a loving higher power that this power will support any thought that we have, regardless of its nature. If it didn't support everything, how did that guy shoot all those people in Maine? How do all these things happen? Every consciousness is supported. And that's why I think people confuse what love is. Love is resonance. Love is support. Regardless of the nature of the idea, regardless of the nature of the vibration, the universe will support that. And this is why bad things move into the world, and this is why good things move into the world. So when I asked that question, what's the universe's paradigm? What's the higher power's paradigm? And it was support. It's giving. So if I want to start to get in harmony with the universal laws, I'll just mimic what the universe does. I'll start to give on those frequencies. And I find that as you start to give on those frequencies, you start to fall in harmony with the law. Now, there's another concept, and I want to be clear, like I'm not a religious man or anything. I'll use these words, but anybody can take any way that they desire, whatever works for you. There's this concept of giving your life over to God, or you could say handing it over to the universe, whatever it is. Well, if that's true, why don't you just give your whole life over to God? Why don't you just give your whole life over to the universe and stop getting so involved? Because the same power that grows the trees, and the same power that makes the wind blow, and the same power that brings spring after winter and summer after spring, you and I are a part of this universe. So the same power will do all the work. You may have to put some conscious effort into altering what's flowing in, but outside that, you got nothing to do with it. So whenever you set a goal, you need to understand that there's a power that's got your back. There's a power that will produce that goal. If anybody sits even for 5 minutes and reflects back, you'll realize your life's got very little to do with you. You are not the producer. You are the director, but you are not the producer.
That's a powerful distinction right there. You are the director, but you are not the producer.
No, and isn't that a lovely idea? Because now I've got no pressure on me.
Right.
It's all good. So when you set these goals, your job is to get honest. Your job is to take moments throughout your day and focus that mind. That's where the effort is.
Yeah. When we think about these big goals, because in our work, I'm encountering people that have said, I want to start a coaching business. I want to coach people. I want to help people. I'm going to start my own business doing that. And that's a pretty big goal because most of them have never had their own business. And one of the things that I see a lot, I battled this with myself. I still battle it sometime today. And I see it a lot with the new coaches that are out there. They're like, my life is really good right now. If I do this, how is it going to mess things? Like, I don't want this big goal to mess things up. How do you address that?
Oh, man, this is fantastic. This is what we call first world problems now. Yeah. Okay, so we're talking to the coach that's stuck.
Yeah, they're stuck between good and great or great and extraordinary or
I believe that it's easier to move from poverty to mediocrity than it is from mediocrity to greatness, because mediocrity is comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in poverty, when you're poor, you know it. You know what it feels like. You know what it feels like to have to borrow. You know what it feels like. It's so obvious it hurts. Mediocrity doesn't hurt. It's dangerous. I'd rather be poor than mediocre. At least you know.
Mm-hmm.
This is interesting. So my income kept going up after I crossed 100. And this was about 3 years ago. I got stuck at 250,000 a month. Now, I know boo-hoo to me, like I'm saying first world problems. But I knew I was in trouble because I was getting bored. And I think that we live just in two states. We either live in an inspired state or an uninspired state. There's only two states for a human to live. Now, I've been living like that for probably about 6 weeks, where I couldn't put my finger on it, but I was like, I'm just not into it. And I was stuck. I was stuck at 250, which hadn't been what been happening. I'd been always gradually expanding. Like my income had always been going up, and it got stuck for 4 months at that rate. And I was okay, something's wrong because it's not expanding. I don't see that movement. And I ended up calling up a mentor of mine, and I talked to him for an hour. I think what I'm about to share with you is going to help a lot of plateaued people out there. He said to me very fast, he's like, I know what's wrong with you. I said, tell me. He said, you're afraid. He said, you're afraid to lose what you've got.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I remember when you started working, doing this, he said, you didn't want your life. And that's true. I did not want anything to do with my current life when I started this. So when people say, oh, was it difficult? No, I couldn't wait to get rid of that version of me. I couldn't wait to change my income. I couldn't wait to quit my job. I had another lady ask me on a podcast once, have you ever doubted this material? Never since 2017. I knew what I found. There was no question marks around this anymore. I knew that I'd found what I'd been looking for. So when I got stuck, I stopped risking. Because when your income goes from $5,000 a month and you start bringing in $250,000 a month, that's a lot of money. And let's get honest, a person doesn't really need much more than that, do they?
Right.
So you start to coast. And then I slipped into protection mode instead of expansion mode. So when he told me that, I was like, oh my God, like unconsciously, I've been taken over by fear. I'm afraid to lose what I have.
Yeah.
So I said, fine, I'll risk it all. And I pushed all the chips in. I said, let's create something. Let's go. I'll risk it all. And within 3 months, had a $500,000 a month.
Wow. It's interesting when we get to those plateau places. It can be a small plateau, a big plateau, but the distinctions that you've shared between the inspired state or the uninspired state, protection mode, expansion mode, stop risking, starting to coast, dropping into that fear. And we have to become mindful because like you said, a lot of times it can happen unconsciously. We don't even realize it. I know for me, one of the situations that I experienced, I was in this immense state of gratitude. What I didn't realize is the more I stayed in that gratitude, the more fear was billowing around it. I thought it was okay and fine because I was experiencing gratitude, but I wasn't aware of the fear that was circling around me because I was afraid to lose what I had created. And it can be a tricky spot.
And this is just a little tidbit for all the coaches out there. You can't stop. I've worked with some coaches in my career, and I'll tell you, you got to eat your own cooking. Easy to talk about, easy to make those first few shifts. That's a sellable idea, right? Like once you make your own shifts, once you have some testimonials behind you, you've become your own testimonial. You've used it, you've lost the weight, you've increased the income, you've started to get good at sales, whatever it is. And then you stop following the rules that produce results. There's a law in this universe called the law of entropy. The law of entropy states that everything is moving into a state of disorder and disintegration. If you observe nature, if you observe the room that you're in, that room eventually will need a renovation. Like everything is disintegrating. And this is good because this is where all service comes from for human beings. It's all trying to create order where there's disorder. If something is left untouched, it disintegrates. This law, the law of entropy, is inflation in the financial world. You cannot keep $1 in the bank. If you keep $1 in the bank and don't touch it, in 10 years, that dollar is not worth $1 anymore. It's worth about 75 cents. So nothing in the universe stops. And you and I are also not allowed to stop. And this is where goals come in. A goal is a spiritual seed that gets a human being in harmony with the laws of the universe. It gets a human being in harmony with the primary law of create or disintegrate.
Okay, that is the coolest definition of a goal I have ever heard. I've never heard it put that way. Now, let me ask this. Take my situation. We're celebrating 20 years, and I'm having this interesting encounter where, oh my gosh, I'm the woman that I once dreamed of. I'm the leader. I'm the business owner. I'm the coach. I'm that person. I dared to dream 20 years ago. I have become that person. Knowing this law of entropy, can I just be okay with right here? Can that be a thing? Or it's going to start declining? There has to be some sort of goal. What's the next evolution?
Let's say you're like an investor or something. Let's say you have some money building up and you own your home and whatever the heck, right? Your income could be going up, but your state of mind will gradually move into an uninspired state. This you cannot get away from.
And so we need to find what those goals are that keeps us moving into that inspired state, that keeps expanding us, whatever that is.
That's right. So when I crossed the 100, that's massive for a guy that's been doing a job for over a decade, earning $5,000 a month, to a guy that's doing a labor of love, earning 1.4 million, like $1.4 million to me in 1 year. I'm talking about my money. When you make that shift, let's get honest, you can get comfortable. You say, wow, this is crazy. It took me 8 months to condition my mind to go for $1 million a month. You have to condition the mind because I know the law, so I knew I have no option but to grow. This law, no man, no woman, no person can get away from it.
Now, earlier you were talking about some of your setbacks that you've had. What are some of the strategies or approaches that you would recommend for maintaining that belief, maintaining that commitment, that focus during those setbacks so that you continue in this manifestation and you don't let the setback consume you or get the best of you?
Yeah. There's two ways of drifting. There's the form of drifting where you fall under a spell of the paradigm, relapse into an old state of consciousness. And the next thing you know, you wake up 3 months later and you're like, oh, damn it, I've drifted off my stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one way to pull yourself back from drifting. Or what you can do is you can set up a daily thing so that that drifting doesn't occur. So what I like to do is I like to study. So all my clients, it's a very strange world that they come into. I say to them whenever they enroll, I say, you're about to enter a world that most people don't even know exists. And it's a very strange world. So first thing we do is we study powerful information. Now, there's a few books behind me right now. And these books, they're not financial books, but they've made me a multimillionaire. They've given me peace of mind. They've given me a labor of love. They've given me a dream home. They've given me amazing friends all over the world. They give me everything. And I read the same books over and over. I study them. So we got to study powerful information. Then the second thing we get the clients into, and myself, I do this every day as well. You got to start to study yourself. Who are you? Are you really who you pretend to be? Get honest. There's a man lived 2,000 years ago and he said, know the truth and the truth shall set you free. Well, there's only one thing to be set free from, and it's ignorance. When it comes to the subconscious mind, it's also known as the unconscious mind. Well, what does that mean? That means you don't know what the hell's in there. This is what goal setting does. The purpose of a goal is not to get. The purpose of a goal is to grow. It's to expand.
That's one of the things we tell the new coaches when they're starting the business and we begin our journey together. This is going to be one of the greatest adventures, and it's your personal growth journey. That's what's really going on here. It's, yes, you're going to have a great business. Yes, you'll work with clients. Yes, you'll be of service and make impact, and all of those things will come true, and you will grow and you will evolve into the next greatest version of yourself. And this is the playground for that.
It's create or disintegrate. And the second you grab onto money, the second you grab onto something that's already been created, you're on your way out. You're reversing the flow. We have no choice. So the second thing is we start to study ourselves. And then the third is we start to study ourselves in comparison to the information. Do I do that? Do I believe that? When people hire mentorships, like I'm in the mindset mentorship space, you got to understand something. You're not after just their knowledge. What you're actually after is their belief system. Because you can have all the knowledge in the world. If you don't have a belief system that aligns with that knowledge, you can never produce a result of it. I know this because I did it for 15 years. I gathered and gathered and gathered. On that weekend in May of 2017, it was almost like a giant waterbed above me, and a pin for some reason appeared in my hand, and I got to poke it, and all that information started to just flow into me. It was very painful. When you learn something, you have to emotionalize it. You have to say, do I do that? Do I believe that? Would I like that? When you hire a mentor, you're not just after the knowledge, you're after the belief system, because it's not the knowledge that's producing their results. It's their belief system behind the knowledge that's producing results.
Mm-hmm.
When a person starts to understand this, you're off to the races.
Now, is there any aspects of manifestations, habits related to that I haven't asked about yet that you want to make sure we get into the conversation?
Well, I can tell you, visualization is a foundation. So I made a decision a little over 4 years ago. I would rely on my imagination for everything, not my intelligence, not my abilities, my imagination. So at the time, my wife and I made a decision to stay in the city that we live, but we wanted to build a dream home. If we're going to stay for the next 15 years, then let's just live how we want. So we found some land, took us about 3 or 4 months. And when we were standing on it, we wanted it. And I felt like it was mine, except we had 2 problems. Number 1, didn't have enough money to buy it. And then number 2, it was owned by someone else. Someone else had the deposit down on it. I was like disappointed, right? But then this little voice went off in my head, said, well, no. You may not have the money. It doesn't appear that you're ever going to own this because someone else does. But my mind said, what do you have? I have an imagination. I built a clear mental picture of me, my wife, and my girls living in this home. Within 21 days, we had all the money. The business took off like a rocket. We had all the money. And that person went through a divorce, called the developer and said, hey, I got to give this lot back. As I'm talking to you today, I am literally sitting in the dream home. Then I started asking myself, how far does this go?
Mm-hmm.
Since I've begun to rely on my imagination has never let me down. The only time that I haven't been able to produce a result precisely what I wanted or better is when I've not given it the proper focus. So I visualize for significant amounts of time every day. And then what I do is I top it up 3 times 5 minutes a day. I do aggressive auto-suggestion. So I will just repeat what I want over and over and over. And it's almost like you get the whole body involved. My life has never stopped expanding for it. Never fails.
I love that you said the phrase or better. That was one that I learned. My husband and I laughed because I talk about how I conjured him. I had a come to Jesus meeting. I'd gotten divorced, was on my own, was in this whole dating thing. I'm like, you know what? Forget it. I'm done. So I'm sitting in my backyard. I have what I call a come to Jesus meeting with God. And I'm like, look, I'm done. Leave me alone. And then I got on my high horse and I'm like, and by the way, if there ever is going to be a guy, I literally had my journal and I literally was like, it better be this. And I listed it all out. And I was like, or ... better. And I kid you not, a few weeks later, I encountered this man through an incredible story. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother podcast. We got married in 2006, and it really taught me the power of clarity, visualizing, making that decision, having that clarity, and then the power of the ... or better. That's how I have balanced setting that ambitious goal, having that clarity, focusing on myself, changing the internal, and leave room for the magic of the universe and that support that I can't even comprehend or imagine or begin to picture, but I leave room for it through that or better. So I'm really glad that you brought that into the conversation.
So the faster we can get out of the way and start to trust in a power that has formed the entire universe, I think it can help you increase your income a little bit.
Just a little bit. And who knows what else. Well, Dave, let's summarize some of the things we've talked about today. And you started it off with just the simple but profound clarity of manifestation, moving thought into the world, reminding us that we're all manifestors. Just what are we manifesting and becoming conscious of that. I love how you gave us that simple process. It starts with a goal. It's got to be audacious. We've got to have that goal. It's got to stretch you. And we have to make the decision. It has to be that clear decision. And then you so generously shared the $35,000 lesson that you learned from that mentor. to really make that decision and make the goal on what you want, not what you already had, and then have that clear mental picture. We talked about balancing the work that we do on the inside with the magic of the universe and leaving room for that, and remembering what God's paradigm is. I love that. Just a reminder that is here to support us if we just get out of the way. We got into some of the daily practices to make sure setbacks don't even happen, and the law of entropy, not becoming comfortable, making sure we don't get bored, making sure that we don't plateau and stop risking and start coasting, so that we keep growing and keep evolving and keep moving forward. Dave, is there anything else that you want to share? Any parting words?
I always like to close the podcast or any interview with 3 quotes. These are 3 quotes that have truly altered my life. I spent time with these ideas because they're profound. The first one is, you are now and you will become what you think about. So your life today is a manifestation of what you're thinking about in the past, and your life tomorrow will be a manifestation of what you're thinking about now. So you are now and you will become what you think about. That's from Earl Nightingale. The second one is from a man named James Allen. He said, circumstances don't make the person, they reveal them. And if we start to understand that it's okay to be afraid, what's not okay is to stop. It's not okay to let the fear control you, because I think we all respond to fear differently. Some of us really invert. And I'm here to tell you, you're going to have to learn to condition the mind to grow, to get stronger. When you feel that fear, you have to expand. You have to push all in. When I got stuck at $250 a month, I had to risk it all. I had to push all my chips in, and I had to become willing to risk it. And when I did that, it doubled. The last one is a quote that actually came to me directly, and it was, have faith that you'll be supported through every phase of your growth. Whatever it is that you desire to do, I'm here to tell you there's a power that'll help you. You just have to have the courage and the control to keep on pushing it.
Beautiful. Thank you for listening to this episode of Just Between Coaches, and a big thank you to Dave Conway for this incredible conversation. You can find out more about him at conway.consulting. That's Conway, CONWAY.consulting. In the show notes, you'll find links to his website, where you'll also find his free 21-day manifestation challenge. And there'll be other resources there as well. Dave, thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you, Melinda. Thank you for having me.
I'm Melinda Cohan, and you've been listening to Just Between Coaches. Just Between Coaches is part of the Mirasee FM podcast network, which also includes such shows as Making It and Consciousness Explored. To catch great episodes on Just Between Coaches, please follow us on Mirasee FM's YouTube channel or your favorite podcast player. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a comment or a starred review. It's the best way to help us get these ideas to more people. Thank you, and see you next time.